us to learn how to shake it off and bear some fruit. And then furthermore, he expects for us to embrace the idea of shaking it off, and when trouble and crisis comes, he expects for us to retreat to the Mount of Olives and remind ourselves that our experience is like his. It's a crushing experience, but that we have the power to overcome. And so God says, now that you are on this Wednesday night of Holy Week in restored relationship with me, every time you face conflict, every time you face crisis, every time you face the cloudiness of challenge, I expect for you to shake it off. And my expectation of you to shake it off is because when I am present, you ought to have strength to shake it off. I don't know about anybody else how your day was today, but I preached this sermon to myself all day long. It looked like from the time we started with conference call at 6:30 in the morning, I had to shake off one thing or another. This was one of them days that I had, and thank God they don't come often, but Murphy's Law prevailed. Whatever could go wrong, it just went wrong. And the Lord, in the midst of my complaint to him, I said, God, I tried to be faithful this week. I've tried to labor this week. I've tried to preach this week the best I know how to preach. And in the midst of my complaint, I heard the Lord say, shake it off. The reality is tonight, I need to tell you, God expects for you to develop a shake it off mindset, because you cannot be effective in ministry until you learn how to shake it off. But the reality is we must not allow the enemy to keep us incarcerated and in bondage and seek to do ministry at the same time. I know it doesn't happen here in Bethesda, but at the church that I'm delighted to pastor, every now and again people try to do ministry while they're still in bondage and not in the practice of shaking it off, and they're unsuccessful because you can't please God when you're bound by anger. You cannot please God when you're bound by a spirit of defeat. It's hard to be on the praise team when you are walking and wallowing in despair and disgust. You got to learn how to shake some things off. And every now and again I discovered this, Pastor Weaver, that sometimes the enemy will ride to church with you, but please, before you get out of your vehicle, learn how to shake it off. Before you come into the house of God, learn how to shake it off. So tonight, look with me at events that take place that really teach Paul what he demonstrates in chapter 28. You've got to, and I gave you an assignment on last night to look at 2 Samuel 15. I give you one tonight. You need to look at Acts chapter 27. Because in Acts chapter 27, the Apostle Paul shows us through an invitation to the table to hear both God speak and watch what God does in his life. Paul says, when I came to Melita in chapter 28, because of what God did in chapter 27, I was able to shake it off. He says, in other words, if it hadn't been for chapter 27, I might not have made it to chapter and through chapter 28. And the reality for all of us here tonight, I told you on last night that when you face challenge, when you face crisis, when you face the hand of the enemy being vigilant and busy, you need to look back at your yesterday. You need to take a look back at what God has done in the past, because there's a secret in that, y'all. What he's done yesterday, he can do it today. Sometimes, now don't let folk call you crazy, but every now and again you got to talk to yourself, and you got to say, come here yesterday and sit down, have a conversation with me and talk to me, remind me what God did, remind me, refresh me how God moved this and lifted that and tweaked this and twisted twisted that remind me how the hand of God navigated me around one thing or another. Come here yesterday and speak to my today, because if you don't, I might just lose my mind. So chapter 27, come with me. It begins in verse 23. Paul and the gang are in a violent storm. Well, I don't have time to go and unpack all of the nuances as to where he's headed and why he's headed and how he got on the ship, but he and the men who are on board encounter a violent storm. I need to tell somebody here tonight, storms do come. And ironically, in the midst of this storm, because God was teaching him, this was shake off preparation. And he's told in verse 23, in a storm, be of good cheer. There will be no loss of life. And when you learn how to shake it off, I tell you what God told Paul, be of good cheer. He's shown in verse 23, the reason you can be of good cheer and shake it off is because he said, the angel of the Lord stood by me. I don't know if you ever get excited at the thought that when we laid down last night and when we lay down tonight, God has given angelic beings assignments. And he's given them scripts. He's given them instructions that he says, when this comes, do that. And when that comes, do this. And all last night, while we slumbered and slept, while we tossed and turned, there was a battle going on. You weren't in the battle, but you were the subject of the battle. And all night and all day, angels keep watching over me. And the reason you woke today in time and not eternity is because the angel of the Lord stood by you. That's the reason when you wake up tomorrow, I don't care what pain you have, I don't care who's messing with you, I don't care whether Arthur or any of his gang have got you down. You want to open up your mouth and tell the Lord, thank you, because I woke up in time and not eternity. The storm was bad. Verse 24 suggests that God says that don't be afraid. This is all so contradictory to the reality of storm. That's right. Be of good cheer. I'm in a storm. Be of good cheer. Lift up your head. I'm in a storm. Lift up your head. Be of good cheer. The angel is standing by, and then don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. He says, because you have a destiny. That's right. All around you, water is raging. All around you, the billows are tossing. All around you, the sea is boisterous. But you have a destiny. Learn how to shake it off, because Jeremiah would put it like this. You have an expected end. In verse 25, Paul says, I'm feeling better now. He's kind of like my friend Marvin Wiley from Rock of Ages Church in Chicago. When he's about to, when he begins to get toward the close of the sermon, he's starting to feel it. He said, I feel a little better now. Apostle Paul said, I feel better. He said, I believe, when you learn how to shake it off, I believe that it will be just as God told me it was going to be. Well, you can shake it off when you start learning how to trust God. And if your trust gets deficient, if your trust becomes malnourished, look at the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, and eavesdrop on a conversation Jesus had with the father of a boy who was tormented and ill. And Jesus said, if you can believe, if you can just believe, everything's going to be all right. And the father of the boy said, Lord, I believe, but help thou my unbelief. If you're going to shake it off every now and again, you got to talk to the Lord and say, Lord, I do believe. Lord, I trust you. I do. Lord, I have faith, but this storm is so big that, Lord, my faith may not be as big as it needs to be. Help thou my unbelief. God can handle what you are dealing with, but sometimes I need to ask the Lord, Lord, help thou. Verses 29, the text suggests that Paul and the gang, even though they have had this encounter in the verses that are leading up to this, that they're terrified. They're afraid. Well, because they are looking at the storm. Let me help somebody on this Wednesday night. I told you Jesus, I believe, was in contemplation about things that were coming, but he went through anyhow. The Apostle Paul is in this moment and he's panicking. The guys around him are panicking. And look at the difference. Jesus, while he was viewing what he was about to go through, he looked through a supernatural lens. Well, Paul looked through a natural lens. And all Paul saw was wind and waves and storm. Be careful when you're in a storm. Be careful what lens you're looking through. Number one. Number two, be careful who's on board with you. Sometimes you'll be all right, but it's the folk around you that make you lose it. If you're going to shake it off, look through the right lens and have the right folk on board. I know whatever it is, my life seems to be tossed and driven. I need some praying folk around me. I need some folk who know how to get a prayer through. I don't need negative people. I don't need nasty people. I don't need complaining people. I need people who are stronger than I am. Look at the verses. Look at verse 29 when you go home. Here's the counsel. Don't be afraid, because fear will drive you into the night. They're on this boat. The storm is bad. Don't be afraid, because fear will drive you into the night. But watch, look at what the text says in verse 29. It says they dropped 4 anchors. Come on. Thank you, praise team. They dropped 4 anchors. Whenever you're in a storm, drop anchor. You do know the anchor is Jesus, don't you? They're in the storm, drop anchor and be still. And wait on the Lord. Told you the other night, the Apostle Paul helps us to understand how and why we can do this in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 6, being confident, drop anchor. In verse 30, he says, after you've dropped anchor, don't panic. He says, you're going to make it. It's bad, but don't panic. Don't lose it. You're going to make it. The story unfolds as some folk were ready to jump ship, etc., etc. And the Apostle Paul has to give some instruction to the centurion. Don't let them do that, because if they do that, all of us going to die. Whatever you do in a storm, don't panic. Somebody put it like this: be still and know that I am God. Just hold on in times of crisis as you're trying to shake it off. Be still. In verse 33 to verse 36, here's the good counsel. And I know Pastor Weaver has been laboring with this. God says to Paul and the gang, look, the storm is raging. Drop anchor. I got this thing. He says, eat something. They have been in a storm that's been so rough until they haven't been able to eat, because eating would make them seasick. He says, eat something. He then suggests that as you strengthen yourself, get ready for what I'm about to do. Well, you tell somebody tonight, you're in a storm, God's saying shake it off. But you can't shake it off without strength to shake it off. Eat something. Eat something. What? Eat the word of God. Oh, taste and see that the Lord, he is good. The text suggests that they committed themselves to the sea after strengthening themselves. The problem with Pastor Weaver, so many church folk today, is they can't handle much because they're malnourished.
Well,
and if they eat the wrong things. Too many churches today, and I praise God for Pastor Weaving at Bethesda, not one of these churches, but too many folk are flocking to places where all they want to hear is glorified philosophy. But God and Taylor, Bill Jones would suggest that when you hear something that is simply there to fluff you up and to make you feel good, they say ain't no blood on that thing. And the reality is you need to be someplace that's serving a meal that's going to nourish you and strengthen you. And nobody can nourish you and strengthen you like Jesus can. The reality is, if you want to make it through your storm, if you want to shake it off, you got to eat something. So the text puts it like this. The text says that they made it. Some on boards, and some on broken pieces. The ship broke up, but they made it. So God was tempering Paul for what was about to happen at Melita. So the text suggests that they got there and it was rainy and it was cold. People were barbarians, but they were kind. They fixed the fire. And the text suggests that Paul wanted to be helpful. And so Paul gathered some sticks. And when he put the sticks on the fire,
well,
they were just sticks. But one of those sticks was a snake.
Well,
and the text suggests that Paul, they thought, was going to die.
I hear you, preacher.
They said it's just going to be a matter of minutes. And he going to keel over. They looked and the snake was holding on to Paul's hand. They said, this is a venomous snake. This snake going to kill him. And when Paul didn't drop dead, when he didn't swell up, they changed their tone and they called him a god. Well, let me help you tonight. The viper in that bundle of sticks represents, that snake represents people that will attack you. And in their attack, like these barbarous people, suggest that you're not going to make it. But I suggest you learn how to do what Paul did. Look at the text. The text suggests that the snake bit him, but he shook it off. Now I need you to really begin to understand this tonight. I'm going to labor for a few minutes and I'm going to quit. That Paul picked up the bundle of sticks and he was fine until he got by the fire.
Well, say it, preacher. Hear him tonight.
It was the heat of the fire that made the snake come out. As long as he was in the cold, the snake was fine. But when it got near the heat, I wish y'all were. The snake woke up. You need to begin to understand that the snake bit Paul because Paul got too close to the fire. Your joy, your shout, your praise will make the enemy raise up and begin to attack you. Well, and somebody understand this thing. As long as you were cold, as long as you were mean, as long as you didn't have no joy, as long as you ain't have no song, as long as you could sit there and not speak to anybody, you were fine. The enemy wasn't bothering you. But the moment the Lord caught you on fire, the enemy rose up against you. He got snake bit. because of the heat. But understand something. God is so sovereign. God allowed the snake to bite him for a reason. Somebody please hear me. I don't know who I'm talking to. But whatever you're going through, God is allowing you to go through it for a reason. These people who looked at Paul, who saw the snake hanging on, who expected for him to swell up and die, they watched him shake it off into the fire, and they call him a murderer. They suggested he escaped the sea, but vengeance caught up to him. But now they say he must be a god. Every time you go through what you go through, God is simply trying to show somebody else who he really is. God is trying to show that he's your shield, that he is your glory, that he is the lift of your head. He's trying to show somebody that he is your light and your salvation. He's trying to show somebody that yes, weeping may endure for night, but joy does come in the morning. He's trying to show somebody that if God before you, he's more than the whole world against you. He's trying to quiet your haters. He's trying to put folk in the proper place. He's trying to let somebody know that God is on your side. So, the text teaches us something else. God allowed that snake to bite Paul to show Paul and show us his power. They thought Paul was being punished. They said that he's a murderer, and see, didn't get him, but God has a way of catching up. They looked. They saw, according to this text, they saw the snake hanging on. Please get this. The enemy holds on as long as you let him. The Lord had to remind me of this today. I don't have shame because I am who I am, but things had gone so off script today, and I started to go meander down that lane that I advise people not to go down. And the Lord reminded me that the enemy gonna hold on as long as you let him. He gonna rob you of your joy. You ain't gonna be able to stand with power tonight, because he gonna hold on as long as you let him. But if you get some good sense and shake him off, he's gonna have to leave you alone. Y'all do know we have power over him, don't you? Y'all do know we've been given authority over him, don't you? Y'all do know it ain't wise to put him behind your back, to put him under your feet, because you can step on his head. You do know that when Jesus got up, he said, all power is in my hand, and I'm walking with him, so we got power too. Well, notice the text. I'm trying to hurry. Notice the text. They thought the hand of Paul was going to swell up. They said two things. Either he's going to swell up or he's going to drop dead. The enemy bites you, waiting for you to swell up. Waiting for you to lose your joy. Waiting for you to get puffed up. Waiting for you to get angry, waiting for you to tell somebody where to go and how fast to get there, waiting for you to act like you don't know who the Lord is. Every time you get big, the enemy said they're going to swell up, they're going to swell up, they're going to swell up. Last night, they were praising, last night, they were lifting holy hands, but I done bit them now, they're going to swell up. You need to shake it off. Text says he shook it off into the fire. Paul refused to carry the snake. We're going to let it hang on any longer, but he shook it off into the fire. Every now and again. So folk ought to be bringing some stuff to the fire. Because the fire represents the Holy Spirit.
Hallelujah.
The fire represents and is embodied in our worship and in our praise. Bless God, every time we gather like this, you can bring some stuff to the fire.
Thank you, God.
What do I bring?
Pastor, we've invited us to come to the altar. Praise God for your obedience. But in Queens, you can invite folks to come to the altar, and sometimes they just sit there and look at you like you're crazy. But when hell is breaking loose in your life, you ought to bring that stuff to the fire. When you had a rough week, a rough day, a rough whatever, you ought to bring it to the fire.
Yeah.
And the way you bring it to the fire is not passively. Paul shook that thing off. And you can just begin to imagine how his hand was shaking and vibrating. And when you bring what you bring to the fire, you need to bring it with some urgency. Now I don't know you all that well, but I don't like snakes, y'all. And I declare, when I see this picture in my mind, I ain't just casually walking through the fire. I'm running as fast as I can to get. I'm knocking folk over. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm knocking folk over to get to the fire, because the snake bite will kill me if I don't get to the fire. And you ought to have that kind of urgency in you. If you have a shake it off spirit, when you come to Bethesda, you ought to come with urgency. You ought to come with a sense of, I gotta get there. And look here, I'm going to praise him even if you don't praise him, because you don't know the hell I'm going through. And I've got to praise him for myself. Shake it off. I got to leave y'all. But here it is. I just imagine that Paul had a flashback to his teacher Gamaliel, and remember the lesson that he was taught from Numbers chapter 21. The people of Israel done what they normally do. God had enough. So God sent vipers, fiery serpents, to bite the people. Pastor, I laugh at this. They don't want to hear Moses. But when the snakes started biting, folks started dying. They ran to Moses. God told Moses to make the image of a fiery serpent. He said, tell the people that whenever the snakes bite, look up.
Look up.
He says that whoever looks up will live. I find it interesting that God didn't make the snakes stop biting, but he said if you look up, you'll live. Come to understand that snakes are going to keep biting, y'all. The attacks are going to keep coming. But what you and I have got to learn how to do is learn how to look up and live. I'm closing. When I tell you this story, I'm reminded of a crop duster who worked in Texas. Crop dusting one day in the heat of the day, and began to run low on fuel. So he knew a place where he could both refuel and refresh himself. This crop duster landed his plane, got out of the plane, forgetting, because he was thirsty and tired, to close the plane door. He went in to refresh himself, told the attendant what to do with the plane and the fuel, etc., etc., etc. He came out, he felt better, had refreshed himself, had a cold drinking, and he was ready to finish his run. Got back in the plane, began taxiing down the runway. It was right at the time when he had run out of pavement that he heard a rattle in the back of the plane. He turned around and he looked, and there were 2 rattlesnakes that were making their way toward the cockpit. He began to panic because he thought, I'm at a runway, I can't stop. I don't know what I'm going to do when these snakes are going to bite me, because they're not concerned about life. He was in a panic mode at the end of the runway, and he began to take off. And as the plane took off and leveled off, the snakes kind of went back when they lost a little ground, but looked back again, and the snakes were on their way. It was at that moment he remembered Miss Lovekin, his science teacher, who told him one day that snakes can't live at high altitude. So what he did was he pulled back on the stick, and the plane began to climb. He kept